Hey everyone, it's Jim. Welcome back to the channel. Now, I decided to rank the MCU movies in a tier list. I got my tier list right here. I'm just going to get straight into it. Just something to fill in those gaps. You know what? I keep saying that. I explained in my my moving forward video that I've been doing stuff like this, so I don't know why I'm re-explaining it. Just watch that video. Alright, so let's get into these MCU movies. Now, pretty much in a couple of months when Black Panther Wakanda Forever comes out and a bunch of other shows like She-Hulk and that, this list will probably be redundant, but I want to add it anyway, just for the sake of, just for me. This is my list right here. You don't have to agree with it, but this is my list here. I'm a sweaty mess at the moment. It's like 30 degrees in the UK, so I feel and look like shit. Here we go. So yeah, this is my tier list, everyone. So down here, I have every single MCU show and MCU movie to date. It includes the Netflix shows and the Disney Plus shows, and it's even got like the Raimi films and the Amazing Spider-Man films here. I'm not going to include those or Venom. I mean, I know technically they're all into decline right now, but like, I mainly want to focus on what started it all, which was Iron Man in 2008, through to what we have now. Yes, you could argue that the original Spider-Man film, the original Sam Raimi film, this one here, is technically the first MCU film now. But technically it's not at the same time because the MCU wasn't even a thing when this film came out. So I'm basing it just on Iron Man through to what we have now. And I'm going to try and go through it in order, of when it was released. Talk about it for like a minute or two. I'm not going to go into immense depth with every single one. I just want to see how this goes. Right, so I'm going to exclude them. I'm just going to leave them down here because basically what I did is I automatically searched a template that was already made just to speed things up a little bit, so these aren't the images that I found online. So I'm just going to leave these down below here and just focus on what I have seen, which is pretty much everything. I think I've watched everything really, except for What If and Moon Knight. I think I've seen everything except for that. So yeah, we're not doing too bad already. So anyway, let's get into the first MCU film, shall we? That is, where's Iron Man? What do they like put it in such a random order? Well, where the fuck is Iron Man? Or is it just not there? Here it is. Okay. This, to me, I wouldn't say it's absolute gold, but I would definitely put it at the S tier. I wouldn't say it's the best film ever made in the world, but it pretty much set the stakes, set the boundaries of what the MCU is going to be. Marvel took a huge risk with this product because nobody really knew who, well, unless you're a comic reader, nobody really was that familiar with Iron Man. I mean, I certainly wasn't. Like, my knowledge of Iron Man pretty much comes from these films, and I think they did a really good job at inheriting a story about a billionaire who's a cocky bastard, doesn't really give a shit about anybody but himself, changing and becoming, the world's, I wouldn't say first Avenger, that was technically Cap, but you know what I mean, this was the first film, and like, the tease at the end, with Nick Fury just coming up to Tony Stark and saying, I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger initiative, that was enough to get fans going, like, oh, are they actually going to do this for a change? Are they actually going to, like, go into all these heroes and build all this up, rather than making, like, crappy universes that don't really connect, like Fantastic Four and Ghost Rider and stuff like that? And I think they pulled it off pretty well. Like, I mean, the CGI today is nowhere near as good as what you see now, but I thought it was a generally really fun, energetic origin story, making someone who should be unlikable, likable, and someone you can root for. Iron Man, it's a damn good film, so it goes at the S tier. Right, so what we got next? The Incredible Hulk. Yeah, I think you kind of gathered it would go down there, because, like, The Incredible Hulk, pretty much if you go on anybody's, like, MCU rankings, you will see The Incredible Hulk is pretty much always down the bottom. What can I really say about it? It's just fine. I mean, I don't think it's an overall bad film. Edward Norton, I think that's what distracts me the most, really. It's when you see a different actor in the role. Now, usually when they change actors, that could be absolutely fine. You could, because they changed Terrence Howard in Iron Man to Don Cheadle in Iron Man 2. I generally prefer I generally prefer Don Cheadle as War Machine than I do Terrence Howard. Not to say Terrence Howard was bad in the role. I'm more familiar with Don Cheadle. And so when you go back to this Hulk film and see not Mark Ruffalo, it's a little bit strange, but that's not a problem in of itself. I just thought that the CGI is a bit dated. It's just it's just a fine sort of film. I mean, I don't really know what to say about it, to be honest. It's fine. It's fine. The cat's in the room, everybody. So anyway, moving on. The first Thor. It's kind of difficult. I would put it at the C tier. It's just alright. Now, this film did a relatively good job at introducing us to the lore of Asgard and Thor as a character. It wasn't until Ragnarok where they really got the character right and then sort of threw it all away in Endgame, and especially in Thor Love and Thunder. So, Thor is a pretty average superhero film about a guy who is exiled from his family. He's got brother issues, daddy issues, and it's just a fine sort of superhero origin story. I don't really know what else I can add to it. It's just okay. Right, so next up on the list, here we go. Captain America, the First Avenger. That is also at the C tier. Again, perfectly fine origin story for the character. I don't really think Marvel really kicked off into what I would consider, well, I wouldn't say greatness, but like, until it really got to that point in time where, like, every single year I would look forward to a Marvel movie, a new MCU movie. It didn't really kick off until the first Avengers film, if I'm being honest. But going back to Phase 1, these films are mostly just average for the most part. I mean, when you get to the first Avengers film, that's when it gets a little bit better. But overall, Captain America, the First Avenger, I liked Hugo Weaving as Red Skull. I liked the dynamic between Steve and Bucky. It's just an alright film. I mean, again, like, I really think Iron Man was, out of the individual storylines, should I say, not the Avengers film, but the individual storylines from the first phase of the MCU, I believe that Iron Man is the only true great one, and then you have, like, a Met film like the Hulk, and then okay films like Thor and Cap 1, stuff like that. So let's move on. Iron Man 2 also goes at the D tier. That is mainly because it is really, really dumb. It has a weak villain in Ivan Vanko. It has a really stupid scene where War Machine and Iron Man are punching each other while drunk, and they're kind of just, as they punch each other, you hear this weird clanging sound, and it's just like kapoom, 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 like a Scooby-Doo cartoon. And there's just a bunch of other stuff like that rammed in this film, which make a lot of people not like it, and that's why it's pretty much at the bottom of most people's lists. Do I hate it? No. There's not a lot of films in this franchise that I do hate. But I think Iron Man 2, definitely along with the first Hulk film, is just pretty meh. I mean, they don't piss me off. I mean, you will find films further on in this list where I'm a little more critical of them and I get a little more pissed off when I'm talking. It's probably because at that point, the films coming up should be great, should be good, and they're just not. And I've stated in videos before that I find it more frustrating if something which is supposed to be good, that should be good, is just bad, rather than something that's outright bad. It's more frustrating when there's potential there and all the bits and pieces together to make something great and it just doesn't happen. That is more frustrating to me than something that's outright bad. So, Iron Man 2 doesn't piss me off, but you'll find other films in this same tier later which do piss me off. I hope that wraps things up a little bit. So anyway, Avengers Assemble, as it's titled here in the UK, but The Avengers in the US. So this was a great sort of crossover and a real treat for the fans at the time, because this is the first time that a movie franchise has ever like built into something and brought all our heroes together on screen. That shot towards the end of the movie, where they're all like, the camera's rotating around the team and you just see Iron Man landing to his spot. That is really cool. It's just an overall fun action film full of character emotion and stuff like that. It was really the start of much better things to come and stuff like that, because I generally don't think it's the strongest Avengers film, but not the worst either. I think that goes to Age of Ultron, to be honest, but like, this is a really, really fun, energetic film, fast-paced, loads of characters on screen which you glue to, you find them all likeable, you like the dynamic between all of them. It's just a really entertaining film. So next up on the list is Iron Man 3. A lot of people give this flack for, Iron Man doesn't spend a lot of time in the suit, and yeah, I can see that. That's going at the C tier as well. What I liked about it is that it was more of a Tony Stark story than an Iron Man story. I mean, you see him out of the suit most of the time, and it really shows that the challenges that he's facing, he has to not rely on his tech as much. It really shows you the implications of him using his brain mostly to create little bits and bobs here and there to try and get around certain situations. Now, I can see why that can turn people off. I generally, when I first watched it, didn't really like it all that much, because I was like, I just want to see him in the suit, man, just in the suit. I get that. I do. When you go back and watch this film, you have a little more of an appreciation for it, but I just generally... Anyway, Iron Man 3, decent enough film. Don't think it's great. Villain was pretty weak. But Robert Downey Jr. always shines as his character. Next up on the list is Thor the Dark World. Jumping all these up down here. Here we go. Bottom tier, definitely. Thor 2 is pretty bad. It has probably the least interesting and least compelling villain out of the entire MCU. No disrespect to Christopher Eccleston. I believe that's what his name is. You may know him from Doctor Who. He was really, really bland. I didn't find him menacing. There's bits and pieces in this story which are just not fun. I really don't know what to say about it. It's just a very, very bland MCU film, a very bland sequel to Thor. You know what? Fuck it. I'm moving on. Next up, we have Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, this is actually one of my favourites, so I'm going to put it in the S tier. Disney, again, took a risk with this film, like implicating all these characters into one film, which there's been Marvel films in the past, not necessarily owned by Disney, but like films like Spider-Man 3 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, where they try and ram too much into one film. It can feel overwhelming and... underwhelming because you don't get enough time to stretch out all these characters. Guardians doesn't do this. It gets it right. There's a group of people that couldn't be any more different. You have like the outlaw guy, daughter of Thanos, a guy who's essentially in prison for like killing people. That's Drax. And then you have the dynamic duo of Rocket and Groot, who are just two guys trying to get by in life, doing illegal stuff just to get money. And they all band together and become like, you know, like the saviors of the galaxy. That's what I really like about this film. Especially in the sense that it's also kind of hilarious. Like, it's really, really funny. Like, to this day, this film still gets a giggle out of me, and I still really, really like it. One of my favourites. The cast just worked for me. Chris Pratt is great. Zoe Saldana is great. Dave Bautista is great. Bradley Cooper is great. Even Vin Diesel's great, even though his vocabulary is limited to I and am and Groot. Specifically in that order. So yeah, overall, Guardians of the Galaxy, I really like the film. Great film. Right, so next up on the list, Captain America and the Winter Soldier. This is going at the S tier as well. I really like this film. This is a prime example of what happens when you take a kind of average film like the first Avenger, and then the sequel comes out, and it's just 10 times better. It expands on everything from Cap as a character, to his inner struggles in thinking about, his best friend Bucky, who turns out to be a bad guy. It ups the action, it ups the stakes, it ups pretty much everything that you can ask for in a sequel. And there's plenty of sequels that get this right. Like, one of the prime examples I can think of is Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, so much better than the original. There's The Dark Knight, which is so much better than Batman Begins. I wouldn't say Terminator, no. Terminator 1 and 2 are pretty much on par. So yeah, that's basically what I mean. It's like when a sequel does everything right, you get a film like Captain America the Winter Soldier. Fantastic film. And I must point out that the best fight scene in the entire thing was definitely the fight on the bridge between Bucky and Cap. Cap's not even suited up at this point, but the choreography is just great. Fast-paced movement. You can feel the stakes of the moment. And it's just really, really good stuff. I don't even know if I've actually got these in particular order. Like, I know that Cap 2 and Guardians were released in 2014. I know that. Whether I'm getting these in the right order or not, I really don't know. But I'm trying to keep them within the year they were released, kind of. So, yeah. Right, so I'm guessing now we're moving to 2015, if I'm correct. So let's have a look. It would start with Daredevil, wouldn't it? Obviously, this show is great. Daredevil is probably my favourite superhero TV show ever. Like, I remember at the time it was released, I was reading a list online, and this list basically said that the Flash TV show was up there with Daredevil in terms of superhero quality at the time. And then I thought, what are you talking about? The Flash, the first 2 seasons, I enjoy them. I think they're pretty good. I mean, there is a YouTuber that I watched who's hilarious, by the way. I suggest watching these videos right here. He's writing what he's saying in the objectivity of the action and, the superhero powers and stuff like that. It doesn't dampen my enjoyment of those first 2 seasons. But to compare The Flash to Daredevil, I really don't think there's any competition, because Daredevil surpasses The Flash in so many ways I can't even count. Charlie Cox is great as this character. Absolutely fantastic. And I suppose since Daredevil's a TV show, I have to talk about all 3 seasons, but I don't have time for that. I'll just say Season 1 was great. Season 2 was flawed, but great. Season 3 was great. Season 3 was probably my favourite. Daredevil is an awesome show. I am a bit worried about them bringing him back to see what they'll do with him, but we'll see, shall we? We'll see. In that very same year, we also had Jessica Jones. Now, there's a lot in terms of this There's a lot in terms of this show that I haven't seen. I haven't seen the 3rd season, so I don't know technically how it ends. But of what I see in the 1st season, I thought was absolutely great. Jessica is a very compelling character. She's a very damaged individual. She's rude to everybody. She drinks on the job. She's just a really interesting, compelling character who you learn to give a shit about. Kristen Ritter is great. I didn't really like the direction of the 2nd season and what they did with it, but it was still really good. And the 3rd season I haven't seen, so I can't really comment. Right, so what else have we got? Avengers Age of Ultron. This is going at the C tier as well. I thought it was alright. It does what a sequel does as well, where it gives you more of what you asked, of what we had before, in terms of action and stakes, I suppose. There's just something about it which doesn't quite click with me the way that the first Avengers film did. I just didn't enjoy it as much as the first Avengers film. You know, sometimes when you make these lists, it's kind of frustrating when you think that you feel obligated to have something interesting to say about them. But I really don't know what to say about Age of Ultron. It's a fun movie. I really like the scene in the church where the camera's rotating around the team in slow motion and you can see all these cool moves. They're taking out all these robots. That scene gave me goosebumps. That scene is great and probably one of my favourites in the MCU as a whole. But the film itself, I just don't think it's as good as the first Avengers film. Moving on to 2016. I believe it was Doctor Strange. Yeah, that's going at... Oh, wait, wrong one. That's Multiverse of Madness. Where's the first one? Where's the first Doctor Strange tier list? Here it is. I don't rate this film as much as most people do. I think it's okay. Fairly decent origin story. But the thing is with Doctor Strange as a character, I feel he's more interesting when he's, you know, like a guest sort of character in a different film, like Infinity War, Endgame, Spider-Man No Way Home. He's always more interesting to me when he's not front and centre. That's not to say that his films are bad. Well, the first film wasn't bad at least. It was interesting seeing the mystic arts and everything like that. It's just, I don't click or resonate with Doctor Strange as much as I do with a lot of other characters on this list. So that's basically why it's as low as it is. It's not a bad film, just didn't click with me that much. Now, back in 2016, we have Captain America Civil War. This was a fairly good film. You see, when you really think about the story elements and that it was just a huge misunderstanding between the Avengers, I feel like putting it lower than an A tier. But then again, the emotion and the acting and the action and stuff like that, and the cameos and how it was all able to squeeze in pretty well. That is what makes me want to put it at the A tier. But it's so difficult. It's so difficult because those story beats of a huge misunderstanding in the airport scene, and obviously, if you compare this film to the comic, there were so many more heroes involved in the comic than they were in this film. It makes me want to put it lower, but I don't think I will because because I enjoy Civil War for what it is, and the tragedy of like friendships falling apart and stuff like that. Really compelling stuff, and I just thought it was a great character story in a way. Like you could say that the story beats of the the Sokovia Accords and the disagreement between Cap and Iron Man is a bit silly. Yeah, I get that, but I still enjoy it for what it is. Right, so next up on the list, I believe we're in 2017 now. Just let me double check everything just to make sure I haven't missed anything in terms of these. Oh bollocks! I missed Ant-Man. Fuck's sake, Ant-Man. Let's go back a year, shall we? Ant-Man is a fairly decent film as well. Nice little heist film. Good introduction to the character with Paul Rudd. I don't think the Ant-Man films are overall great. Definitely think this one is better than the first one at least. So yeah, I'm going to put it there. You know what? I think Luke Cage and Iron Fist were also in 2016. So before I move on to 2017, Luke Cage was alright. Not really my kind of thing. Iron Fist was bad. Alright, so there we go. Now I can move on to 2017. The first film that came out, I believe, was Spider-Man Homecoming. I really like this film. I really like it. I'm going to put it at the A tier. So what I really, really like about Homecoming is that Spider-Man, it's very, very different to what we've seen before. Like, pretty much in the Amazing Spider-Man and in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, we saw Peter Parker becoming a badass pretty quickly. In this film, he's still kind of a rookie. And so we see him make mistakes, we see him make dumb decisions, yet he still does make dumb decisions in future films as well. This was the film that paved the way for how his character would develop, and the mistakes that he makes, and growing into, you know, the character that we know him as now. And I really, really like that. It's just the fact that this kid feels like the world is on his shoulders. He feels that he has to take this guy out. Tony Stark's like, no, don't do it. And I really, really like that mentorship between Spider-Man and Tony Stark. It's very, very different to what Uncle Ben and Spider-Man were in the other films. And overall, I just really, really enjoyed it. I don't think it's, you know, it has the most breathtaking action, but I think there's plenty of moments in it that make me want to put it this high. For example, the scene where he's holding the ship together with his webs. There's the scene where he's got all the debris on top of him, and he lifts it all up and proves that, you know, he's powerful enough to take out the Vulture. Michael Keaton was a good villain too. So yeah, Spider-Man Homecoming, I really like it. Now, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This to me was a bit of a dip in quality compared to what the first one was, definitely. I put it at the B tier. You know what, it's got to be lower. I'm sorry guys. I really, really like this film, don't get me wrong. There are just plenty of things in it which lower it for me. For example, the characters in this film are still great, they're still likeable. The introduction to Mantis is really funny. Mantis is funny as hell. We have Ego as the bad guy, great villain played by Kurt Russell. I think it's down to the final fight being all CGI. It was like a huge CGI ship fest, and you didn't really get to see the choreography of the characters. For example, in the first film, when they were on Ronan's ship, and you see like Drax, Groot, and Quill taking out all these bad guys, and Gamora having a fight with Nebula. You don't really see that in this one. You see more of ships flying around and explosions happening, which you can tell is all computer generated. So that I wasn't a huge fan of, and the fact that the humour sort of felt forced at times. I still found it really, really funny in places, especially Baby Groot and Drax and Rocket. Still really funny stuff. But sometimes when the characters laugh, for example, when the characters are laughing at each other, for example, you know, Taserface or something like that, or when Drax would find something funny, it kind of sounded like, you know, the actors were forcing out this laughter. Like, you could tell it's a fake laugh. And that was just so off-putting for me. I was like, that is a fake laugh. Like, kind of brings you back to that, you know, to that quote in the first one, where, like, Peter Quill was like, that's a fake laugh. And Rocket was like, oh, it's real. It's the most real, authentic, hysterical laugh of my entire life. Like, it's kind of like they added that over-exaggerated laugh that Rocket had in the first one, but plastered it multiple times throughout this film. And I thought, yeah, okay, I'm not quite buying the fact that you actually find this funny. But yeah, putting all that aside, I do like the dynamic between Ego and Peter Quill. I think Ego is probably one of the better bad guys of the MCU. Not the best, but one of the better ones. I like the chemistry between them two and the conflict, and that Peter eventually has to kill his dad, stuff like that. That's all good. So it's a very conflicting kind of film, but I don't think Guardians 2 is bad at all. I just have a few criticisms about it. I like Yondu. Yondu is pretty cool in this. But yeah, I'm just going to put it right there. So anyway, let's move on. Back into 2017, we have The Defenders. It was alright. Like, it was nice seeing these characters all come together, you know, from Netflix shows. Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, and Luke Cage. It was nice seeing them all come together. Didn't really tell the best story in the world, but Daredevil's in it, so fuck it. It's alright. Okay, yada 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 yada. We have Thor Ragnarok. This is by far one of my favourite MCU films ever. It's when they really, really nailed the character of Thor. It's kind of like, he needed a change, because in the first Thor film, he was alright. The second Thor film, he was crap. So Thor was kind of that character which people weren't as interested in as Cap and Iron Man and all that sort of stuff. Thor Ragnarok is really what brought this character to light. They gave him a more comedic tone, and I think that works for his character. Until Love and Thunder came out a few years later and completely went overboard with it. This film had the right amount of comedy and the right amount of stakes and the right amount of emotional moments for it to be considered great. The film is really funny. I'd say similar humour to Guardians of the Galaxy. I've always liked Taika Waititi's work, and Thor Ragnarok is just one of the examples of when he really directs a really good film and everything just sort of works. Now, I don't really rate the bad guy Hela much. She's okay. Cate Blanchett is good. I like Valkyrie. Loki, I like Loki in this in this film too. This was kind of his redemption arc, becoming like not so much of a shitty person. And it also had elements of a Planet Hulk storyline, which we know from the comics. Would have been nice for them to explore that a little more. But I get what they were going for here. They have to sort of get this film, go through the motions in this film, and then move on to Infinity War. But yeah, this film, I really, really think they nailed Thor. Chris Hemsworth is the best he's ever been here. And yeah, so Thor Ragnarok. Right, so 2018, I believe Black Panther came out first. Am I wrong here? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Black Panther, then Infinity War, and then Ant-Man and the Wasp. So, Black Panther. Yeah, I'm going to put Black Panther at the B tier. I really, really liked it. Chadwick Boseman, R.I.P. man, I miss you so, so much, honestly. He was great in this role. What I didn't really like was the fact that the way Black Panther was portrayed in Civil War when he had his cameo, the fight style that he had in that seemed a lot more cool than this. I wanted this film to be more like how he was in Civil War, because he was doing like these crazy flips. He was kicking ass. I mean, he literally handed Bucky his own ass. What? Bucky got his ass handed to him. That's what I meant, okay? Get off my back. It's not fair. It's not fair, okay? So yeah, it's kind of like in this film, he gets his ass handed to him quite a lot, T'Challa. And obviously the suit now has this like vibration sort of material in it, and then he can blast the vibration out. That is cool, but I would rather have seen a more grounded kind of superhero film where he just uses the suit that he had in the first in Civil War, so we get to see more of the choreography, because surprisingly a lot of this is CGI, and that is what really, really disappointed me about the action. There's a lot of CGI, not a lot of practical effects when it comes to the fighting, other than when T'Challa is fighting on the waterfall, that whole Wakanda tradition kind of thing. I really like the world building of Wakanda itself. Wakanda is a beautiful looking place. It explores some lore of their culture and what they do there. That is all really good stuff. The cast are really good. I like Chadwick. I like Letitia Wright, I think her name is, the one that plays Shuri. I'm sorry if I got it wrong. And obviously, Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger, one of the best villains in the MCU by far. This villain, you can sort of understand his motivations and what he wants to do, but T'Challa knows that what he's saying isn't wrong technically, but at the same time, he's going about it in the wrong way. He wants to give weapons from Wakanda to the world to help them fight back against their enemies. T'Challa knows this isn't the way to go about it, but doesn't necessarily disagree with what Killmonger's trying to do. And overall, I just thought Black Panther it's a solid film, but there's a lot of stuff in it which stops it from being great for me. Let's see, in 2018 we also had Avengers Infinity War. Now this is top tier MCU for me. Probably my favourite MCU film ever. If I really think about it, I think Infinity War is definitely my favourite MCU film. I think it's better than Endgame. This is definitely what you call like a great payoff when it comes to 11 years of like world building, character building. They all come together for this final battle. The stakes were so high. Thanos was such a compelling villain. You generally feared for the safety of the characters that you come to love over the years. He even kills a couple of them. Heimdall, Loki, Vision, and Gamora. And each and every one of those deaths got me in the heartstrings. Infinity War, it upped the action, it upped the stakes, gave a general sense of danger to everything. Proper world-ending stuff. Now, generally, I wish more of these MCU films, especially in Phase 4 coming up, were more focused on, lower stakes, but still really good. Like Daredevil, for example, is like a street kind of villain. I want to see less world-ending stakes. Like, can one villain just not want to end the world for a change? I mean, but Infinity War, I really thought it was a great film. Everybody was great. The emotional payoff after all those years coming up to this film was great. I remember seeing it in the cinema and just enjoying it from beginning to end. It was such a solid collaboration of all these superheroes. I could pick at a couple of things, but I won't. It's pretty good. So overall, Avengers Infinity War is my favourite MCU film to this day. Solid film, solid characters, solid storytelling. Ant-Man and the Wasp, it's okay. So in 2019 we have Captain Marvel. Bottom tier MCU for me. But I think Captain Marvel is just a damn bland character, especially in this film. This film didn't really do anything to get me hooked on this character. There was a friendship dynamic between her and one of her friends, but the movie gave me no reason to care for that friendship. There's just a lot of stuff in this film which is just really boring. For example, I know I was talking about I would prefer the stakes to be a bit lower in some MCU films. That element is what this film goes for, but at the same time, I was just so uninvested with what I was seeing. Carol Danvers was a very underwhelming character. I think a bit like Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is far better, by the way, as a character and film. I'm just saying that I had the same feeling with Captain Marvel that I did with Doctor Strange, that she works better in films with other people and not necessarily focusing on her own kind of thing. So yeah. So anyway, what have we got now? Avengers Endgame? Yes, Avengers Endgame. This is also top tier MCU for me. Now, over the years and the discussions that I've had with friends and stuff like that, there are so many inconsistencies in Endgame in terms of plot and inconsistencies in the way time travel works. Endgame even goes against its own time travel rules multiple times. It goes against its own time travel rules quite a lot, and that could be really, really frustrating. But I think you could point out all these inconsistencies, and I understand them completely, and it has made me like the film less and less over the years. But I think what it does right, it really does get right, and that's why it's still high up for me. Not my favourite, not by a long shot. I think Infinity War is a far better film, but there's plenty of stuff in Endgame with what it gets right. The flaws don't dampen my enjoyment of the overall thing. I still think it had a strong emotional punch, great action sequences, character arcs coming to a close that just worked. But then again, you could look at all the flaws and that could dampen your perspective and your enjoyment on it. It personally doesn't do that for me. Like, for example, Captain America appearing on the bench at the end. If you follow and listen to Endgame's time travel rules, that should physically be impossible. Now, I'm not going to explain exactly why, because I'll be here all day, but that shouldn't be physically possible. Thanos' ship appearing in the modern 2023, that shouldn't be possible either if you follow the time travel rules. Endgame goes against its own rules, basically, with its time travel stuff. You could point all that out, that could dampen your perspective on it, that could make you like it a little less. It did for me a little bit, but still, with everything else that it did right, it's still a really solid film in my opinion. There's still great stuff in it, which makes me still like it. So I hope that wraps things up a little bit. The last film in 2019 was Spider-Man Far From Home. This is nowhere near as good as Homecoming could have been. It's like there are so many times in this film where Peter Parker almost reveals his identity. Tobey's version of Spider-Man would not fuck up like this. Andrew's version would not fuck up like this. At the same time, I can look at it that way, but I could also see that this Spider-Man is very much more flawed than the other two. For example, the mistakes that he makes is a lot more. He's still a bit of a dumb kid at times. I really didn't like how they handled how MJ found out Spider-Man while Peter was Spider-Man. Because, if you look at Spider-Man 2, the way that MJ found out that Peter was Spider-Man in that film was so pixel perfect. His mask gets tore off because of Doc Ock, and then he turns around and Mary Jane is just looking at him with this face of disbelief and shock, and realising that her world has collapsed around her, realising all the reasons why Peter couldn't be with her. She's just looking at him going, holy shit, this is why. That was great. In this film, it's just like, I found out you were Spider-Man. And there's plenty of other things that I could pick at. There's entertainment value in there with a fairly decent villain in Jack Gyllenhaal as Mysterio. But I don't really find that much enjoyment out of seeing Spider-Man fight drones than I do with him fighting villains like Vulture or Green Goblin or Doc Ock or something like that. It's an okay film, not great. Could be kind of boring in places. So anyway, let's move on. 2020 and 2021 sort of blurred together for me, so I'll try my best to like give as much insight as I can, but I believe the next film that came out was Black Widow. I'm going to put Black Widow D tier. Now, it's not that it was damn right awful. Again, it brings me back to one of the points that I made earlier on in this video, that this film should have been great. It's Natasha Romanoff's first entry into the MCU. This should have happened years ago. She should have been the first female-led superhero film in this franchise, not Captain Marvel. It should have been Scarlett Johansson's Natasha Romanoff, and it should have been great. It should have been, because this is the last time we're going to see this character, and there's so much wrong with it. This is what pisses me off, because I like Scarlett Johansson. I like the character of Black Widow. I don't like what they did in this film. They made Natasha the least interesting character. I don't know how you do that. She's the protagonist. How do you make other people more interesting than her? Florence Pugh as Yelena was more interesting than Natasha Romanoff in this film. Florence Pugh is great though. I love Florence Pugh. Don't get me wrong. Florence Pugh is, and she's amazing. So, that. But everything else just sort of crumbles around me. Taskmaster was done so dirty in this film. I don't really know how to explain my dislike for this version of Taskmaster, because it's like I've seen Taskmaster in the Spider-Man PS4 game, and I've seen that version be so much better than what we have here. If I were to go into this film not knowing who Taskmaster was, I think I would be okay with what they gave us, because I'm not familiar with the character at all outside of the PS4 Spider-Man game. But what we had in that game was so much better than the main antagonist in this film, if you can even call him or her the main antagonist. I was so pissed off when I watched this. It should have been so much better. Alright, moving on. Next up, I believe, was WandaVision. I'm going to be honest, guys. It was okay. I don't really want to get into a huge breakdown of the show and why I didn't like it as much as everybody else. It's just alright. I mean, I did like that it tried to go outside of what the MCU normally does in terms of storytelling and concepts and stuff like that. But it's like, when it got to the very end, it was the same old stuff that we've seen before. You know, huge CGI battles, story inconsistencies, and stuff like that. And what Wanda put this little town through, she should be facing major accountability, but now, like, the show kind of wants us to sympathise with her at the end. And, like, you have that one character, I've forgotten her name, I'm sorry, but she says something like, they'll never know what you did for them. And it's kind of, since WandaVision, I don't think the writers know what to do with her. She's constantly bouncing back and forth between a good and a bad guy. She's in Doctor Strange 2 as well. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it's fine, it's alright. Loki, bottom tier. Now, no one is going to agree with me here, and I can pretty much see that. There are a very there's a shortage of people on the internet who actually share this opinion with me. But Loki, there are so many plot holes and inconsistencies in its storytelling. One thing I'll point out is the fact that there's this thing called the TVA, right? Which is like one interconnected timeline. And they sort of, you know, write out what is going to happen in a specific order. Like, this has to happen, this has to happen. Loki's still in the Tesseract in Endgame. Wasn't supposed to happen, so now he's like a variant, which shouldn't be in the timeline, so they have to, like, arrest him and kill him or something like that. And this timeline, right, it's created by these Time Masters who it turned out to be Kang the Conqueror, or a variant of Kang the Conqueror, should I say. But this is where it gets really, really annoying for me. So there's this timeline, right, where everything is written exactly the way it's supposed to be by an organisation called the TVA. This is what I don't like. Think about it this way. Thor causes Ragnarok and gets Asgard destroyed because the TVA said so. Thanos collected all 6 Infinity Stones and wiped out half of the universe because the TVA made it happen. The Avengers get back at Thanos because the TVA made it happen. Tony Stark, a great character, built up over all these years, sacrificed himself for the greater good because the TVA made him do it. Do you see where I'm going with this? This thing about the TVA making things happen, to me personally, removes the impact of every single emotional moment in the MCU. I mean, I'm just going to say it, I suppose. Loki single-handedly breaks the MCU for me. It breaks the MCU in so many ways, removes all the impact of all the emotional moments because it was supposed to be that way. Like the characters were like the characters were fighting a script or something like that. That's just kind of how it feels to me personally. If you can come up with a good argument and explain to me why that's not the case, I will happily listen to you. I'm trying not to be overly negative, but that goes against what my channel's about, really, because Jim the Cynic. That's just kind of how it feels to me. Loki, it's just a broken mess. But Tom Hiddleston is always fun, I suppose. And Owen Wilson's pretty cool. I really didn't want to talk about Loki because I feel I'm going to get shit on for that. I'm going to get shit on for saying all this. Alright, so I'm just going to move on. Eternals, terrible. When you try and ram like 10 characters into one film and try and stretch them out, didn't quite work for me. Would have worked better as a TV show. Hawkeye. I think Hawkeye is one of the better Disney Plus shows, so I'm going to put that at B. I like the dynamic between Clint and Kate Bishop. Don't really like what they did with Kingpin at the end. But yeah, pretty good. So what else we got? I haven't seen What If. Shang-Chi was alright. What I like about Shang-Chi is it's slightly different than what we've had before. Like, you have this new character come in, his origin story is pretty cool and all that sort of stuff. I don't think it's absolutely fantastic like everyone else is pointing out. I'm probably in like the latter half of it. I'm definitely not in that minority that thinks Shang-Chi is a great film. There are things which I could point out about it all day if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. I like the character, I like the actor. I just wish they would have trusted the choreography a little more, because the fight scenes that we do see are pretty great, but then towards the end it goes all CGI with the powers and stuff like that. And that was kind of a disappointment to me, because I really wanted to see a more like kung fu focused MCU kind of thing, like MCU-ify a kung fu movie. That's what I was hoping it would kind of be, but it kind of wasn't. It just felt like basic MCU stuff towards the end with the CGI dragon and everything like that. Trust the choreography, that's what I'm saying. I believe we are on Spider-Man No Way Home. Spider-Man No Way Home is another film which I could nitpick to death. I could point out the flaws, the inconsistencies, but it's going at the S tier. It's fantastic. Now, it's a bit like Avengers Endgame. Like, you could point out all these flaws, all these broken inconsistencies in its story, with how the multiverse works and stuff like that. But I can push through that, seeing what it does right. Now, I've talked about this before in my annual ranking, so I'm not going to babble on too much about it. Obviously, we now know that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire are both in this film, and it was great seeing them all together. They work really well off each other. The banter, the charisma, the teamwork between them all was great. I love seeing all that. And Spider-Man overall has always been my favourite superhero movie. This, I don't think, is as good as Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the animated Sony film. But for what Spider-Man No Way Home does right, I can kind of push past some of the objective inconsistencies in its storytelling. Right, here we go then. So, we're almost at home stretch, guys. As you can see, there are quite a few films left at the bottom, but that's only because I'm not including them because I either haven't seen them or they're products of Sony, which I don't really want to include, or not part of the MCU, which is like Spider-Man films, Amazing Spider-Man, blah, 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 Venom. Moon Knight I haven't seen, Punisher I haven't seen, all the way through anyway. What If I haven't seen either. So, anyway, Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. Right, so, it's like with this film, it kind of feels like the cameos that appear in this film, it's practically, the film's prioritizing fan service and all these shock value moments to actual quality of the storytelling and everything like that. That's just kind of how it feels to me. Like, Wanda, they really can't make up their mind what they want to do with her, whether she's good or bad. Personally, if it were me, I would just keep her the bad guy. WandaVision messed her up enough in terms of maybe changing her from a good guy to a bad guy. And then in this film, she's just a full-on villain. There is no redemption arc for what she's done now. She's killed people. She's massacred entire towns. She killed Professor X-Man. Well, a variant of him anyway. So, there is no redemption arc for her. So why do they keep going back and forth between, she's good or she's bad? she's corrupted by this evil dark book. I forgot what the damn thing's called and I don't care to research it. It's just, this is where the MCU starts to fall apart for me. Loki really, really broke the system for me. No Way Home was fun and everything like that. But Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, despite the the cool looking visuals and the locations we do get to see, it's not as appealing as it might seem in the trailer. And again, Doctor Strange, I think, is a better character when he's in someone else's film. No disrespect to Benedict Cumberbatch, the guy is amazing. Doctor Strange as a character is really, really cool and compelling. Just, I haven't really seen that in his own film yet. And America Chavez, who calls their daughter America? I'm going to call my daughter England if I have another daughter. I'm going to call it England. All right, so anyway, and Ms. Marvel, it's hard, because like, I really, really liked what I saw in like the first 2 or 3 episodes, with it being like a lower level street stakes kind of superhero show. I like the actress. I think she's really damn likable. And Miss Marvel as a character, I kind of like. After the Avengers game, when I saw her in that, I thought she was pretty good in that. She was like the heart and soul, the essence that brought the Avengers back together. This version, however, not quite as compelling. But if I'm being real, I have to put it at the C tier. Because it's like, it goes from really interesting lower stakes level stuff to more world-ending bollocks. Like, can they just not... Can bad guys just stop trying to end the world all the time and just have, like, a straight motivation, not like, oh, I'm going to do this, but for me to do that, the planet needs to blow up or some shit. It's just getting really annoying. But yeah, it's kind of like they wrapped up the main arc of the TV show in episode 5, but then there's 1 episode to go, so it's kind of like the final episode where Ms. Marvel is fighting Damage Control. That kind of feels like a different story entirely, and so it's kind of like it went back to that low-level street superhero stuff that I liked in the final episode. So the final episode, I liked it, but it's such a jumbled mess of like inconsistent tones and stuff like that. This is the problem which I find with these Disney Plus shows. They would work better as movies with the way the show is structured. What I can say about Daredevil, for example, and the Netflix shows, is that although they were one intertwined story, each episode felt distinct from each other. And you don't really feel that with these MCU shows. It's pretty much just a movie stretched out longer than it needs to be, and that's kind of what I felt with Ms. Marvel. But I do really like the character, and I am looking forward to seeing her in the Marvels. So finally, last one on the list, Thor: Love and Thunder, bottom tier MCU for me. I was really disappointed. After seeing Ragnarok 5 years ago now, I believe it was, I had high hopes that this film would be sort of similar. We had a little cameo from the Guardians, that was fun. I really wanted to see it explore more of that aspect rather than getting Jane back into it and the whole thing about Zeus and the kids and Christian Bale's character, Gore, I believe his name was. They really underutilized him. I really would have liked to have seen some like adventures with the Asgardians of the galaxy. I really wanted to see Thor team up with the Guardians and go on these adventures. I was hoping the film would be about that, but it's nothing remotely like it. Taika Waititi really went over the top with the comedy. For every single moment which has some kind of emotional impact or should have emotional impact, it's undermined by a joke. And while comedic timing has always been pretty good in the MCU, like with Thor Ragnarok and stuff like that, Chris Hemsworth has amazing comedic timing and stuff like that, but I just don't feel it in this. It's like whenever there was a serious moment and I really thought the film was going to go somewhere impactful and, bringing a bit of stakes to it and stuff like that, a joke would be told and I just roll my eyes instead of laughing. And screaming goats, you can find that funny if you want to. I didn't personally. And yeah, I was really, really let down by this film. It kind of pisses me off that Ragnarok was so great, and in this film I didn't really know what to do with Thor. And the whole like love triangle thing, if you can even call it a love triangle, between fucking Mjolnir, Stormbreaker, and Thor was just completely stupid. I mean, Thor goes over to Stormbreaker, right, and tickles the fucking axe under its chin like a dog, and then pours beer on it. What? And there's also like great, impactful moments from previous MCU films like Thanos and the Gauntlet. That's now like an ice cream shop, I believe, in New Asgard, so it's like turned that emotional, impactful moment into a joke as well. I really didn't like Love and Thunder. If you did, great. I'm not taking anything away from you. Right, so guys, that is my MCU tier list because I have not seen the ones at the bottom, so let's go. Bottom tier, we have Eternals, Thor Love and Thunder, Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor Dark World, Iron Fist, Captain Marvel, Black Widow, Loki, and Doctor Strange Into the Multiverse of Madness. The C tier, we have the first Thor film, Captain America the First Avenger, Iron Man 3, Avengers Age of Ultron, Doctor Strange, Ant-Man, Luke Cage, Guardians 2, Defenders, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Spider-Man Far From Home, WandaVision, Ms. Marvel, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Shang-Chi. The B tier, we have Black Panther and Hawkeye. The A tier, we have the Avengers, Captain America Civil War, and Spider-Man Homecoming. And in the S tier, guys, these are what I personally think are MCU greats. Avengers Infinity War, Iron Man, Guardians of the Galaxy, Captain America the Winter Soldier, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, that's Jessica Jones' first season anyway, Thor Ragnarok, Avengers Endgame, and Spider-Man No Way Home. So there we have it, guys. My MCU tier list. This was kind of exhausting to make. I went into this not even rewatching the franchise, just, you know, going off memory for most of it. But I really wanted just to upload something while I work on my other videos. I know that I've shit on quite a lot of it, and I really hope that people don't think I'm being disingenuous. That's not my intention to be disingenuous towards any of these. I'm just expressing frustration with the way I feel about storytelling in certain things, especially Loki. I didn't talk about Loki when it first came out because I was generally worried about, you know, my overall opinion on it, and that it wasn't really in the vast majority of other people's opinions. Like, people seem to praise Loki as one of the best shows in the Disney Plus era. And yeah, if you think that, that's fine. That's absolutely great. But I personally can't just see past the fact that the emotion is taken out of the show. I mean, the impactful moments are taken out of the MCU because it was all set in stone. Like, it was supposed to happen. Doesn't feel like there was any stakes anymore because, this hero's not going to fail because the TVA said so. Oh, that bad guy may have won that day, but it won't win the next day because the TVA said so. That's what bothers me about it. But I can see enjoyment being had out of it if you can push past that stuff. Usually, as I've said in other, now when I talked about Endgame and No Way Home, I can push past inconsistencies, but something like that is just too big for me to ignore, I'm afraid. But again, if you want a civil discussion about why you think I'm wrong about any of these, let me know down below in the comments. We'll have a nice chat. Please be respectful. Don't be a dick, please. I can't deal with it. But overall, guys, thank you for watching my tier list video. I never actually thought I would talk about Marvel again for a long time, at least. Like, I think the last Marvel video I made was actually my final thoughts on WandaVision. The last episode, that was like last year. So I do appreciate you sitting down and watching this all the way through. Anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap it up before I keep talking to myself and get tired of my own voice, which I already am. Thank you very much for watching if you've made it to the end. If you like what I do here, please consider clicking that subscribe button. I really appreciate it. Remember, it's not just a movie, it's an experience. Take care, everyone, and have a good day.